Welcome to Kumbasoft DPAA tutorials. This tutorial is about deleting IPs from the various locations IPs can generally be found in DataPower. So be sure to set your video playback to high definition, and though some visual details of DPAA may have changed since this video was created, the functionality will be the same. So to set up, I've selected a couple of appliances after starting DPAA, and I've selected the default domain, though again, I've only done this for clarity because if I select any other domain, this is still going to work the same way because there's only one place IPs are generally defined in DataPower. It's not impossible. We could find an IP, say as a load balancer group member, we could find an IP in the back end of a service, or on the front side handler, which is generally not done. Generally, we use host aliases and DNS static hosts and various things like that. But you could find them there. This is not about removing those IPs. Those are object configurations, and you would manipulate IPs there differently. What we're talking about is the locations where the collections of IPs exist. So the first thing we're going to talk about is removing DNS static hosts. So what I've done is I've got the find and then the object tabs up. I've scrolled through this list of object types, which are many, and I've selected the DNS name service type. And I'm just going to search for all the DNS name services, and there's only one in each appliance, so that's kind of convenient to us. To remove DNS static host, the DNS static host object property type is a collection. So in order to manipulate collections on objects, what we do is we pop up the hamburger menu, or we can right mouse click over the table after we've made our selection, and we can then manage DNS name service static hosts. So by selecting that, I can pull these static hosts that have been created in here into a large table, and this table does a lot of cool things for us. I want you to note that I've selected two appliances to work with, and so those two appliance DNS static host entries are also listed in aggregate in this table. And sometimes you see them scattered throughout the table, but that doesn't matter. What we're going to do is we're going to delete these two, and I want you to note that there's one here and there's one here because there are two appliances at play. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to select the delete button next to this entry here, and I'm just going to click away to show you something. I want you to note that in this row, the delete checkbox is now selected. It wasn't selected before. And that's because the synchronized changes to same name elements button is turned on. And this is generally the way DPAA is going to behave for you. It's certainly the default way. That is, the assumption is if I'm removing this DNS entry called DNS1 from this appliance, then I probably also want to remove it from this other appliance. Likewise, if I'm on this DNS2 and I want to remove it, and I select that, again, if I tab away, you're going to see in the entry here on DNS2, the delete checkbox has been selected for me. Likewise, if I unselect it somewhere, it's going to unselect its paired object up here as long as synchronized changes is on. So this is what I want to do. I want to get rid of these two DNS entries that are associated with these IPs. These IPs in these locations. So these four DNS entries are going to be removed, basically two from each appliance. I'm going to go and select finish, and then DPAA has gone and modified the DNS static hosts and taken out those IPs. To prove that, I'm going to right mouse click and I'm going to select open selected objects, which is going to give me the ability to compare the object sets side by side. And as I scroll down into the static host area, I can see there aren't the DNS1 and DNS2 entries aren't in here anymore. And so I could have shown you this screen before, but to edit them, we have to go through this menu item. And of course, I can pull this back up too and show you that the DNS1 and DNS2 no longer exist here either. Now, DPAA is also showing us that some modification has occurred. If you look at the diskette next to the default domain, it's indicating that the default domain has changed. And so we can save those configuration changes by selecting the diskette button above the domain list and it will go through the process of saving those configurations to a persisted state on the DataPower appliances or those that have been affected by saving the configuration. Another way to remove IPs, say from an Ethernet interface, is to look up that Ethernet interface. In my case, I'm going to be focusing on Ethernet 3. So I'm going to search for all the Ethernet 3 interfaces on all the selected appliances. Now again, I could be working on 4 or 10 or 100. I'm going to select both of these, and I'm kind of clicking and dragging my mouse as a convenience, but you can control or command click, or you can also shift click to get a list. If I have more than 2, that would have been more interesting. And then again, this is a collection of things, so I have several IPs in several locations, and so I'm going to go manipulate secondary virtual IPs, and they could be secondary addresses, other addresses. Oh, should have said secondary regular IPs. Let's go select those. That's a bit of a mistake on my part by not paying attention to where they were. So we have a number of IPs in this area. So these are secondary IPs. So I have these .4, .5, .6, and I've got a .4, .5, .6 again on the other appliance. Again, I'm working on 2 appliances. So if I say I want to get rid of this 6, I can click here. And again, like we saw in the DNS entries, static host entries, because synchronize is on, the other one is automatically selected. I can click finish. And just as quick as that, the .6 IP address is gone from the Ethernet interface address. I can show it here, or I can again show it here. And as I pull that back up, you can see that the .6 entry is gone. So it's really that easy to remove IPs. And again, I only really had to click the delete checkbox one time. If I had 10 appliances and I had that same IP across those 10 appliances, I only had to select the delete button once to delete them all, because DPAA is synchronizing your changes. Again, I have the diskette icon showing up here, and I can choose to save it or not. Now, another place we can go to delete IPs is under the Find IPs tab. So find IPs, and then we get another place where we can go list IPs and search for IPs. There are other tutorials that talk about doing that, but I've entered a search expression for the 99.99.99 addresses, and I'm going to search for them. And then I get a whole list of things, and so it looks a little confusing at first, but basically, again, there's a tutorial on this, but basically DPAA searches everywhere it can to find and represents where that IP is wherever it may find it. Now, there is one rule. In order to delete an IP from this screen, you must select an IP configured on an Ethernet 3. And the way you know that is, if you see it from IP address status and you try to delete it, it's not going to be able to easily be deleted from there. So what we're looking for is we're looking for this set of IPs here. And in this case, to delete them, we want to physically select them all. So this is a way we're going to do that. We're going to select them all from the list. Now notice, this is a primary IP we're removing. This is a secondary IP we're removing, and DPAA is smart enough to know the difference. So now I'm going to right mouse click, and I'm going to select delete IPs. And so what happens is, DPAA is going to confirm the IPs I want to delete. Now, if I had made a mistake and selected an incorrect IP, let's say I want to keep this .1 because it's a primary on Ethernet 3, I'm saying, oh, no, I don't want to delete that one. I can turn that checkbox off here and say, no, that one's not going to go away, and we can preserve that IP as we're moving along. But we can keep these selected and then select finish. Now, this screen is a little bit different from the other ones. When we're editing the list of IPs in an Ethernet interface, there's some synchronized editing and some other thing that's going on. But in this screen, we can select the IPs individually. I don't have to worry about whether or not, it's more granular. My action is more granular here in order to remove that. So understand that as we're going through this screen to do it. I'm going to select finish. And what we do is we delete IPs from the Ethernet interface of Dev 1 and 2. we're going to click this button, and because we manipulated IPs, it's going to research this search pattern for us, and you'll notice the only IP that remains is the .1 IP. And so what happens here is that it has already removed those IPs from the Ethernet 3 interface. So we could have done that just as quickly on 2, 3, or 10 different appliances. Now I have that checkbox sitting, I have that button the diskette there to indicate that I had to make the change. And like before, I just persist that configuration back to the appliances, and now we've persisted our changes permanently so that if the box restarts or the domain reloads or whatever, then we can keep our changes just that easily. So I hope this was helpful for you. You can easily manage IPs. There are many tutorials out there on how to do those, to add and manipulate and change IPs in various ways. So go out to www.kumbasoft.com. Every tutorial about the product is out there. There's 10 to 12 hours of videos to watch just in your spare time. You can also go to the contact us link, put in your information, and you can ask for a license, or you can request technical support. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.